Here's how it went down at Jordan-Hare Stadium, and really needing another miracle at Jordan-Hare to beat this Georgia team, #2 in the country. Again, they have allowed less than 5 points per game coming in. The Deep South's oldest rivalry, been playing each other since 1892. Georgia outscoring its opponents 99-0 over the last 2 weeks. Bo Nix knows home field. And Georgia knows defense. No better defense in the nation than the Bulldogs, and they proved it early in this one, sacking Bo Nix twice while forcing 4 punts, 1 takeaway, 5 drives after allowing a field goal on the opening possession. The interception was Bo's first in his previous 256 pass attempts. As for the Georgia offense, it's Stetson Bennett, the fourth once again. JT Daniels still dealing with the lat injury. Touchdown here to Adonai Mitchell.
Yeah, big-time route by Mitchell. In and out, nice pivot route at the goal line. Good execution offensively for Georgia.
Georgia up 17-3. Mitchell's second touchdown of the season. Auburn looking to get some points before halftime, and they go for it.
I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Get 3 points, 17-60, go down to halftime. Only 11 points, opportunity to regroup. Didn't get any points. It's like getting punched in the gut.
Yeah, but to play devil's advocate, why not go for it?
No,
you're playing Georgia.
You got to go. You don't get anything. It's like getting punched in the gut.
Well, Georgia's going to get something because they got the ball to start the second half, and here they come. Lad McConkey, 60-yard touchdown reception, 24-3, just like that to start the third quarter. The mailman delivers on Saturday.
I talked about the splash plays. I mean, when you look at the aggressive style that we're seeing from this offense, something we haven't seen in a long, long time from Georgia.
McConkey, 5 catches, 135 yards to score, and Tank Bigsby breaks through.
Yeah.
Just the second touchdown allowed by the Georgia defense this season, first at September 18th.
Wow.
Uh-oh. Maybe a crack in the Georgia defense. Not so much. The Dogs are going to seal it. Zamir White in for 6.
Got to make that tap.
Georgia wins it 34-10. 5th straight win against Auburn. Improving to 6-0 for the 3rd time in the past 4 years. Georgia outscoring ranked opponents 81-13 this season. Georgia covers the 14.5.
Yes, sir.
Bryant McFadden told you to lay the points with Dogs. They cover. Chip goes under the total. That cashes just barely. Game goes under the total for the 5th straight meeting as we get 44 combined points. Auburn 1-6 against the spread as an underdog since the start of last season, so not good to be backing Bo Nix and the Tigers at this point as Georgia wins once again. Again, they've won 5 in a row in this series, the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Georgia gives up 10 points in this game. 25.8 points per game is Clemson in other games. They give up 3 there to Georgia. Georgia just, look, they gave a 13 to South Carolina. They've just been incredible on defense.
Look at the 2 zeros, goose eggs.
Been fantastic. All right, let's get right to the site. Welcome in CBS Sports reporter Jenny Dell. Jenny, you spoke with Kirby Smart. What do you have to say after this one?
He was obviously happy for the win, but as every coach usually says, he said there's still a lot that this team needs to work on. He was really pleased with Stetson Bennett's performance. Obviously, there's questions there at quarterback, but now I think the big question is, what do you do if JT Daniels gets healthy? Do you put Stetson Bennett in there? He's dominant here today. I think Kirby didn't seem too pleased with the defense allowing some points on the board. I don't know if they're just used to having shutouts, but overall, it was a good Georgia win.
All right, so you have now seen this Georgia defense up close and personal. What's your biggest takeaway from this Georgia defense as they allow Auburn just 10 points in the game?
These are some big boys. Let me tell you, when I was first out on the field, and this place is rocking. So the fact that they came out here and had that performance was impressive. But this Georgia defense, I was standing there, and I like to think I'm, somewhat tall. They are just massive. They are massive human beings, and just watching them in person, I would not want to be on that field going up against those guys. I mean, they were as dominant as their numbers put out.
Jenny Dell joining us post-game here on CBS Sports HQ as Georgia rolls to another victory, 34-10. They've won 5 in a row against the Tigers. Jenny, thanks. Good to see you as always.
Always a pleasure.
So, again, Georgia wins it 34-10. They're 6-0, BMAC. This was kind of automatic, right? I don't know this was ever in question. Maybe the spread.
The spread
but
was.
Considering how good Georgia is, they have set the tone from the season opening victory against Clemson, and it's just that was really their toughest test. They had Arkansas, they shut them out, and then Auburn, maybe a decent test after beating LSU last week, but Georgia is so much further ahead in terms of class.
Yeah, I mean, the job Kirby has been able to do recruiting, that has been the first big-time move when it comes to being successful and then being able to develop these kids. Look at Alabama. We talked about Alabama last week about all the top 5 stars they've been able to get year in and year out. Kirby is doing some of the same things, right? He's maybe a few steps behind Nick Saban, but he's not that far behind like some other college coaches are. And because of that, we're seeing this group of guys come together, the way they've been coaching, the way they've been developing them. No question, one of the best teams in college football.
All right, let's continue our coverage here. Let's welcome in CBS Sports HQ college football analyst Barrett Sallee. Barrett, your reaction to another Georgia win, the defense doing its job, and Stetson Bennett IV delivering on time.
Yeah, just suffocating. This is what Georgia football is all about. And I think when you saw Auburn score that Tank Bigsby run, they had a little bit momentum, and then they just choked Auburn out. That long 10-play drive that culminated with the touchdown, just demoralizing. And that's what Georgia is. Like, they can get down, they can get ugly, they can get filthy. And that's the identity that Kirby Smart has wanted that program to take since he got that job. So, look, I know the Georgia defense, it gets all the headlines, and it should. It's awesome. But the job Stetson Bennett has done coming in and being a deep play threat, being enough of a threat downfield to take pressure off this running game, to take pressure off of Zamir White and James Cook and McIntosh and that crew has been awesome. Like, look, we don't know if Stetson's going to be there long term or not. JT Daniels could get healthy, but the ability of Stetson to hit these receivers deep, and the fact that they've developed these receivers through multiple quarterbacks really is a huge compliment to Kirby Smart, the development within that program, and the way Todd Monken has approached this offense, knowing that it really doesn't matter all that much who's taking the snaps.
Stetson Bennett plays clean football, 14 of 21, 231 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Barrett, if you're Kirby Smart, what are you doing here? If JT Daniels comes back from the right lat injury and you have Stetson Bennett, who has led you to back-to-back victories over Arkansas and now Auburn, what do you do?
Well, the same thing he did last year. You put JT Daniels in when he can play. You know, that's what happened last year. They were playing the best football, I think, of any team in the country at the end of the season. And that's going to be the case this year, too, if you put JT Daniels in. Look, nothing against Stetson Bennett. We talked about at halftime how I think he absolutely is capable of leading Georgia to a national championship. But I picked Georgia to win the national championship before the season, and I did it under the auspices that JT Daniels would be the starting quarterback because he is a better player. He opens up more of the offense. He is more consistent downfield, and he can be more than just I wouldn't say game manager, but more than just a player who can do enough to take pressure off the running game and the defense. He can get you into shootouts consistently if that's what Todd Monken wants him to do. Stetson Bennett, a great player, but JT Daniels is the starting quarterback for this Georgia football team whenever he's back.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Barrett. I think comparing both players, individually speaking, JT is a better quarterback. The thing I love about Stetson Bennett, he has taken advantage of the opportunities. It's a real good story, feel-good story for where he was and now currently where he is. But going forward, if you're talking about trying to compete for a championship, trying to win a championship, JT Daniels has to be the guy. But the luxury that Kirby Smart has, you don't have to worry about rushing JT Daniels back into action if he's not 100%. And I think that's something they will continue to do, take their time with his injury. You don't want this thing to linger, especially towards the end of the season, going into postseason play. Until he's healthy, continue to ride with Stetson Bennett, because when you have depth at the quarterback position, that's a huge plus to have.
Georgia outscoring its opponents 239-33. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
239-33.
Unbelievable.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
They have a tough test coming up against Kentucky, who enters tonight's matchup against LSU undefeated, coming off a big upset win against Florida. As you take a look at their schedule, and they'll be on CBS next week against Kentucky, and then they have a bye, and then it's Florida. Barrett, when you take a look at this schedule, specifically the next couple of games they have against Kentucky and Florida, really the two toughest tests, but at this point, you could argue they're going to run the table.
you couldn't argue it. Like, they are going to run the table. Now, you should watch the next two games because they're on CBS. And, you know, Georgia's a great team that we have to watch every single week because who knows how good they can be. But let's be honest, Kentucky's offense, it really doesn't do anything. You look back at that Florida game last week, they had just over 200 yards. Like, that's not, that is a mirage. So I think they're a little bit of a fraud. You're going to see that whether it be this week or next week when Georgia plays them. And then Florida, I mean, look, it's hard to trust Emory Jones. I don't know how much you watched of the Florida-Vanderbilt game from earlier today, but he's still erratic, and that was against Vandy. So at this point, yeah, Georgia's running the table. And then at that point, they're probably going to play Alabama, and we'll see what happens with Alabama tonight. But I think at that point, that might be the one that you have to get into a shootout in order to win. I think Bennett can do it. I think Daniels can do it. But there's no doubt at this point right now, that was the toughest test I think Georgia has remaining on its schedule. Winning on the Plains in Auburn, a loud environment. And think about this. This was Stetson Bennett taking the snaps on the road in a big game. He didn't really have to do that last year. Yeah, they played at Alabama, and he was 18 of 40 in a loss. But that was a 25% capacity stadium. He had never been in a situation like this, and he handled it just fine. So that was the toughest test. Moving forward, yeah, I think Georgia's running into Mercedes-Benz Stadium the first week of December undefeated.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Barrett. When you look at their schedule, I mean, clearly Georgia, they're the more talented team, more experienced team, they're the well-coached team, so they should take care of their business if they're healthy and they do what they're supposed to do. This Kentucky team, it's a good story so far, but we will see exactly who Kentucky is. We might see that tonight because they do play LSU at home, but traveling to Athens, that's a home game for UGA, and we see what they can do at home. Arkansas got a good taste of what the home cooking was for them, and it didn't taste too good because they were the road team, and they didn't score any points at all. Kentucky's a feel-good story for Coach Stoops right now, but nah, they don't stand a chance, and I'm right there with you. We talk about going to Jacksonville, neutral site. Georgia will be a well-coached team every week. They are always dialed in. They're always focused, and we consistently have seen that, especially in this year's season.
All right, Barrett, so let's play hypothetical, right? Alabama runs the table. Georgia runs the table. They meet in the SEC championship. Georgia loses, just for the sake of the argument. Georgia then gets into the college football playoff with Alabama. As it currently stands right now, what seed are you giving Georgia when you think about, okay, they lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game? Are you giving them the 4 because they have a loss, or are you putting them in the 2-3 to match up against maybe the Big Ten title champion or the Big 12 champion, or say, for example, the Pac-12 somehow sneaks in? Don't think it's likely, but perhaps they get in.
You're selling BYU, or not BYU because they're losing, but Cincinnati short. No, look, I think the natural reaction would be, okay, if they're the only one-loss team, they got to be at 4, right? Look, it's about the top 4 teams. Doesn't matter how many losses, wins, whatever. If they win, they get a bump. But obviously, it's about picking out the top 4 teams. And I think Georgia right now, at that point, in the eyes of the selection committee, would certainly be better than the 4th best team in the country. And with that said, I think they won't say this. In fact, every single person who's gone through the mock selection process knows this as well. They don't look at matchups. They don't engineer matchups. Yeah, they do. Right? Like, yeah, they do. They're going to look at it, and if Georgia's the 4th best team in the country or should get the 4 seed, and Alabama's the 1, they're going to say, no. We just saw that in the semifinal. And maybe they don't say it specifically. Maybe none of the members of the selection committee even talk to each other about it. But it's implied. So, no, I don't think you'll see Georgia and Alabama in a semifinal. You will see them in the national championship game, though. You can write that in ink, write it in Sharpie. Yeah. Georgia and Alabama will play twice this year.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I understand it. If they have one loss and the other teams in the playoffs, they're undefeated, Georgia's still probably one of the best teams in college football if that scenario was to happen. If they lost to Alabama, the odds #1 favorite, and if it's a close ball game, I don't think they should be the 4th seed. I don't. Because if you look at some of the other teams we believe that should get into the playoffs, they all have struggled to some degree to teams that they should be able to handle. Georgia took care of Clemson team at that time was a top 3 team in the country. You saw what they did to Arkansas last week, a shutout. You saw what they did to Auburn this week. Then you have a Kentucky team, regardless of what will happen tonight with LSU and Kentucky, they will be ranked next week as well. So when you factor in how dominant they've been against teams that have been ranked, regardless of what you think about these teams when they play them, they're ranked opponents. If they go to the SEC championship game in Atlanta and lose to Alabama in a competitive ball game, they should not be 4.
Barrett, would you make Alabama a double-digit favorite in the SEC championship game against Georgia? I wouldn't, but would you?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Absolutely
I'm thinking like 6.5.
Oh, I don't even think it'd be that high.
Really?
I don't think. I think you're talking about a pick 'em.
Okay.
Maybe a point or two here or there, depending on what those teams look like when they walk into that stadium. But
Barrett,
I mean, right now,
it
I'd say pick 'em.
depends on who the quarterback is. I think I think that would play a huge. Talking about will it be a pick 'em? Will it be 5? Will it be 6? If Stetson is the quarterback, yeah, I think Bama will be laying some points.
Yeah. Speaking of Alabama, they're coming up in the second game of the SEC on CBS doubleheader, facing Texas A&M. Look, we wanted Texas A&M to be unbeaten at this point, but then they lost 2 games in a row. So Alabama looking to be a team that just rolls over Texas A&M. They've won 8 straight against the Aggies, looking to make it 9 in prime time. 8 Eastern coming up on CBS. You can also watch on CBSSports.com, on the CBS Sports app, and streaming live on Paramount Plus. Of course, we'll have halftime and postgame coverage right here on CBS Sports HQ.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.